She was a foreigner, a widow, and had absolutely nothing to her name, yet she became the ancestor of a king. How did Ruth go from poverty to possession? How did a woman with no wealth, no influence, and no connections become part of one of the greatest family lines in history? Was it luck? Was it chance? Or was there a powerful strategy hidden in her story? The answer may surprise you. Because Ruth's journey was not built on wealth, talent, or status. It was built on faith, hard work, loyalty, and obedience to God. When everyone else saw a hopeless future, Ruth chose to keep moving forward. She kept showing up. She kept working. She kept trusting. And step by step, God turned her struggle into a story of extraordinary blessing. This is the incredible story of Ruth's journey from poverty to possession. There was a time when Ruth had absolutely nothing. No husband. No money. No land. No inheritance. No powerful family to help her. She was a foreigner living in Israel, far away from the home she once knew. Her future looked dark. Every door seemed closed. After the death of her husband, Ruth was left alone with her elderly mother-in-law, Naomi. The two women were widows. They had no provider. No source of income. No clear way to survive. Their food was running out. Their resources were gone. And every day brought new worries. Many people in Ruth's situation would have lost hope. Many would have spent their days complaining about how unfair life was. Many would have waited for someone to come and rescue them. But Ruth chose a different path. Instead of giving up, she decided to take action. Instead of focusing on what she had lost, she focused on what she could do. One morning, while Naomi worried about their future, Ruth made a decision that would change her life forever. She said she would go into the fields and gather leftover grain. It was hard work. There was no guarantee she would find enough food. There was no promise that anyone would help her. But Ruth believed that God would make a way. So, with faith in her heart and determination in her spirit, she stepped out of her small home and began walking toward the fields of Bethlehem. She did not know it yet. What looked like an ordinary walk would become the beginning of an extraordinary miracle. Because while Ruth was searching for grain, God was already guiding her steps toward her destiny. Every morning, before the sun rose high into the sky, Ruth would leave home and walk to the fields. She had a simple goal. Find enough grain to help her and Naomi survive. The work she did was called gleaning. God's law instructed farmers not to collect every stalk of grain during harvest. They were told to leave some behind for the poor, widows, and foreigners. So Ruth followed behind the harvesters, carefully picking up whatever grain was left on the ground. It was not easy work. It was not exciting work. And it certainly was not comfortable. Hour after hour, she bent down under the hot sun. Dust filled the air around her. Her hands became rough from labor. Her muscles ached with exhaustion. As a young foreign woman working alone, every day carried risks and uncertainty. But Ruth refused to quit. She kept showing up. Day after day. Week after week. Even when the work was hard. Even when the future was unclear. She never allowed her difficult situation to destroy her hope. She never allowed poverty to decide who she would become. Instead, she remained faithful to the opportunity God had placed in front of her. And while Ruth was focused on working, something important was happening behind the scenes. People were beginning to notice her. The workers saw her dedication. The supervisors saw her diligence. The community heard about her loyalty to Naomi. Her reputation for humility, faithfulness, and hard work quietly spread from person to person. What seemed like an ordinary field of struggle was slowly becoming a field of favor. Because the very place where Ruth worked for survival was the place where God was preparing her miracle. One day, something extraordinary happened. The field where Ruth had been working belonged to a wealthy and respected man named Boaz. Boaz came to inspect his harvest. As he looked across the fields and watched the workers, one person caught his attention. It was Ruth. Not because she was rich. Not because she was powerful. Not because she was famous. She stood out because of her character. Boaz turned to one of his servants and asked, "Who is that woman?" The servant told him about Ruth. He explained how she had left her homeland to stay with Naomi after the death of her husband. He spoke about her loyalty, her humility, her kindness, her hard work. He told Boaz how she had been working faithfully from morning until evening. Without realizing it, Ruth had built a reputation that people respected. Her faithfulness spoke for her long before she ever met Boaz. Boaz was deeply impressed. So he walked over and spoke to her. He told Ruth to remain in his fields where she would be safe. He instructed his workers not to harm her. He made sure she had water whenever she was thirsty. Then he gave another surprising instruction. He told his workers to leave extra grain behind for her to gather. Boaz treated Ruth with kindness, honor, and generosity. What started as an ordinary day in the field suddenly became a life-changing moment. Ruth thought she was simply gathering grain to survive. But God was doing something much bigger. While Ruth was faithfully working, God was opening doors she could never have opened on her own. The favor she was experiencing did not come from chasing people. It came from faithfully doing what God had placed before her. And the man standing in front of her would soon become a key part of the miracle God had been preparing all along. As the harvest season came to an end, Naomi began to see something important. The kindness Boaz had shown Ruth was not a coincidence. She believed God was working behind the scenes. For months, Ruth had faithfully worked in Boaz's fields. And now, Naomi realized that Boaz could play a much bigger role in their future. According to the customs of Israel, Boaz was a close relative. He was a kinsman redeemer. A man who had the legal right to help protect and restore their family. Naomi knew this could be the opportunity they had been praying for. So one day, she called Ruth and shared a bold plan. She gave Ruth careful instructions about what to do. It was a step of faith, a step of courage, and a step that could change everything. Ruth listened carefully. Then she made a decision. She would trust Naomi's wisdom. That night, after the day's work was finished and the harvest celebration had ended, Ruth quietly made her way to the threshing floor where Boaz was resting. The night was still. The air was calm. And Ruth's heart was filled with hope. Following Naomi's instructions, she respectfully approached Boaz. When Boaz realized she was there, he was surprised. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am Ruth," she replied. Then she made a humble and courageous request. "Spread your protection over me, for you are my kinsman redeemer." It was more than a request for help. It was a request for a future. A request for security. A request for redemption. For a moment, everything seemed uncertain. But Boaz responded with kindness and honor. He praised Ruth for her character and faithfulness. Then he gave her words that changed everything. He promised to do what was right. He assured her that he would take the necessary steps to secure her future. As Ruth left the threshing floor before dawn, she carried more than grain. She carried hope. The midnight strategy had been set in motion. And God was about to turn two widows with nothing into a family with a future. The next chapter of Ruth's story was nothing short of a miracle. Boaz went to the gate of Bethlehem, where important legal matters were settled before the elders of the city. There, in front of witnesses, he took the necessary steps to redeem Naomi's family land. He did everything according to the law. He kept his promise. And when the process was complete, Boaz married Ruth. Just think about how far she had come. Not long before, Ruth was a poor widow with nothing. No husband. No property. No inheritance. No security. She spent her days gathering leftover grain from other people's fields just to survive. But now, everything had changed. The woman who once followed behind the harvesters had become the wife of the owner of the field. Only God could write a story like that. He transformed her life from survival to significance, from sorrow to joy, from lack to abundance, from poverty to possession. But God was not finished. Ruth gave birth to a son. And through her family line came one of Israel's greatest kings, King David. Generations later, her name would become part of the family line of Jesus Christ. The foreign widow who arrived in Bethlehem with nothing became part of God's plan to bless the entire world. What is the lesson from Ruth's story? Never underestimate the power of daily faithfulness. The days of hard work in the fields were not wasted. The seasons of struggle were not meaningless. Every act of obedience was preparing her for the blessing that was ahead. Ruth kept showing up. She kept working. She kept trusting God. And in God's perfect timing, her harvest came. So if you are walking through a difficult season today, don't give up. Keep showing up. Keep being faithful. Keep trusting God. Your harvest season may be much closer than you think. Comment below, "My harvest is coming." And if this story encouraged you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this message with someone who needs hope today.